Blade Runner version, and like, should I be getting into like Sid Field and all this industrial design chairs, or should I go something more towards like an Eames chair? Like, what you sort of ask yourself all these interior design questions, and you sort of build it up from there. You also, doing environment design, you need to think about lighting. Lighting can also help you. In the noir episodes, we would build all these like elaborate sets, and then half the time we would just cover them all in shadow. So by the end of the season, we would only design, like we would really push hard to think about the lighting first, so that we would not design things that would just be covered in dark shadow.
So how has the main title changed over the years? I know, Neal, you did the...
Yeah, I did the original sequence. So the original sequence was for the pilot, right? And we just needed something to stick on to the front of the pilot. Adam famously told me, don't worry about this, nobody's ever going to see this. And the sequence that I did, I only had 4 days left in our schedule to get it done. So I just put something together, and like we would meet on it twice a day, and they would give me some notes. And midway through, they told me that the show is now called Archer. And I was like, okay, cool. They're going to remove all the Duchess text that we built up, and so we took it down and rebuilt it all up again. And then it slowly worked out. And what I ended up with after those 4 days stuck through pretty much unchanged through the first 2 seasons. Around season 2, maybe it was the beginning of season 3 where we started to clean it up. And that was where the poor animator who had to open up my project file and just saw the spider web of like unused ideas mixed in with ideas that are actually on screen, and like nothing's labeled. It's just a copy 17 of one layer. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Because I didn't think anybody would ever use the project again. And that poor animator, that's also where we noticed like Lana's hair would just like blank off in a frame. There's so many mistakes in that first sequence. It's crazy. But ever since that beginning of season 3, we started to tweak it, make it a little bit better, And then Lucky Yates as Krieger was introduced into the cast, into the title sequence, so we had to make a little change there. Scott Sims is the guy who composed the music. He's the brother of Eric Sims, who's one of our producers and original background director. And Scott also helped us do the change when we went to Miami and changed the music. And that was our first sort of like, ooh, we can change things entirely. That was this first like taste of that. And so when we started going into these Coma Dreams, the sequence got a massive overhaul. And it's been really fun to do. I think it's been really cool. Thankfully, they stopped asking me to do them. While I'm an okay animator, I'm not I'm not near the level of the animators that are doing those sequences now. They're really impressive guys.
It's always fun to watch them do, because they go through all these rounds of concepts of like what, in order to feel like it's like, well, it's gonna be space, so like what is that? What does that mean for Lana? And so it's like, and I sit next to one of the people who did a lot of the ideas for this season, and she just had this pages and pages of what it could be, and like that's always fun to see. It's all the stuff that like, in 5 years when you write the next art book that'll come out, but like it's all the stuff that like I'm like, oh man, I wish other people could see how much goes into making just this one thing that's on your screen for 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot of thought and care, and also just trying to craft something that like does stick in your brain and read quickly in 2 seconds, and that's a lot harder than most people realize.
Yeah, it's a whole process. It's super fun to see it though. Like once it really comes together, it's really gratifying. Without a doubt, there's always a moment where it's like, oh, this is not good. What are we doing? Like that.
It's also with every aspect of production, there's always an element.
So this moment of like, are we gonna pull this off? Or is this the time where we fail? Is this where it happens?
Yeah.
When you guys work through the storyboards, do you have a sense of final character designs, or is that going on concurrently?
But yes.
It's both. Sometimes the character design locks immediately. Sometimes it goes into the cycle of, oh, we got to gotta change this, gotta change this, gotta change this. Sometimes the producers, Casey Willis is our co-executive producer, and he, for a large part, has been deciding like what the overall of the characters will, what gets a thumbs up and what gets a thumbs down. And Casey sometimes has something in his head that he wants to see, but it's up to us to sort of get to that design. You know, like he'll know it when he sees it.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a cycle that can happen when you're just trying to hit a specific thought and you're not quite on the same page. You can go through multiple drafts. Other times it goes straight through. Yeah. It just depends on the design. So if we do have a design, the storyboarders have it ahead of time. If we don't, they just kind of rough in something loose.
Yeah. There's a lot of, it's one of those things also because of the process is you do roughs, then you do revisions on those roughs, and then you do what's called cleans, which by then you ideally have a design. So it's like because of that process, you can end up with something that makes the boards look like what ends up in the show, but it's also just as, you know, especially since every episode this season introduces new worlds and characters and stuff like that, so much of it just kind of gets added. Yeah. It's a lot of just, you know, educated guesswork.
Yeah.
All right, so we can open it up to audience questions.
Ooh, Joker's ready to go. What's up?
I've got like 4, but I'll take it slow.
Thank you, go easy on this.
As far as, spoilers, but I'm sure we're all caught up. As far as Archer's coma goes, we're kind of into the 3rd season of that. How much farther do you think we're gonna, because I feel like for you guys it's a bit more fun to bring it up to his imagination of what's going on inside his head.
Yeah.
Like how far do you think you're gonna stretch that before he actually wakes up?
It remains to be seen. I know that they have a plan, and they are currently executing that plan, and that's all I really wanted to say towards that end. I'm really hesitant to say more about that. It is everything they're doing is intentional, and there is a payoff. Hopefully, I can say that.
So kind of with the, you know, we guys talked about like changing things, especially since the setting since the fight, like the setting changes for each season. You talked about like change the, you know, of course, your environment and character design, but you also kind of change how maybe you approach shots, like kind of, this is where I'm like cinema, sort of alliterating the terms.
Sure.
Not really, but like kind of like for instance the noir season, it seemed kind of a bit more like watching a sort of more reminiscent of like watching a film noir movie, not
Yeah.
sort of like how shots are taken and
Yeah.
maybe some transition.
Very much so.
So
The noir season's a really good example of that, in that we were able to use all the tropes of noir with the heavy shadows to do these frames, because we're trying to establish that feel of noir. So you do change how you think about shots and how you are approaching things. With the space season, it's really more about trying to get these big elaborate space sequences to work. So you're shooting it more like an action film that you're going to see. You know? You're going more for these like big scenes.
Well, the evolution of the show is like, it's one of those things where it's like, you know, he and I, or other people in sports, are very influenced by big movies, big TV, but it's one of those things where it's a comedy show, so you have to kind of figure out how to get those, you know, wide shots in there, like those cinematic moments in there, and something as simple as like, for the longest time, we couldn't do what's called a rack focus, like going from something blurry in the foreground to focusing it out, just because some people in production didn't like it, so it didn't happen. Whereas now, it happens in every damn episode this season. And I'm like, oh, of course, the season I'm not fully boarding on is when I can sit there and like...
Just waiting for Kevin to
Yeah. But it's just stuff like that where it's like as we try to mature the visual language as much as we can within the framework of where people's heads are at. And so it's like, and you have to get so many other people on board with that, so it doesn't happen, like, you don't just come in and like, you know, like you're talking about like the extreme angles and just start changing up how it works. And it's just very much, you know, 8 seasons later, the stuff that I wish we could do 8 seasons ago, they're doing, which is, that's awesome. And that's how it evolves.
And some of that's technology too,
Yeah.
and like, for example, in the first season, all of our vehicles were just like a painted Photoshop asset, just moving through screen. It's really hard to do cars doing a turn, because you're like painting 9 steps of a car coming around the corner. So when we made the shift into using 3D cars with painted textures applied to those 3D elements and animating those 3D cars that way, that allowed us to do more camera moves, more car moves, and that's why the chase sequences got more kinetic and got better.
Yeah.
It's because we learned some new tricks, and
Well, then-
we try to up the level every season. Right? And as we learn more things, we try to push those into the pipeline. And I think the 3D work has gotten significantly better than from where we were, you know, in season 3.
Yeah. Well, and also as, you know, it's like Adam didn't write a lot of those moments in, and then as we get better at doing them, we started writing way more of them in.
Yeah.
So it's like one of those things where, like, you know, like you spend all this time wishing that, like, oh man, I wish he would write in more action, and then you get to a place where, like, God damn, there's action in every, like, there's a huge fight scene in every moment of this episode, and you're like, can't we just get a break? So it, you know, it's a pendulum that swings, and it's one of those things. It is concerted, but it's also it's considered in a sense of like, how does this fit in with the visual language of what Archer is, and can we push this in a way that doesn't take people out of it? But,
I got a question. Since you mentioned Disney, Disney just bought Fox. How was that?
Well, Lana's a Disney princess, obviously. It's pretty great.
Yeah.
It's great.
Well, we expect to start production on the all-Archer version of Lady and the Tramp pretty soon. Really excited about who Ray does the noodle with.
No, it really hasn't affected us. Yeah, it's a giant corporate merger that I'm sure it affects somebody way above us, but it doesn't really hurt
Some
us.
extra resources or anything from Pixar or anything like that?
I'm waiting.
I'm just waiting for them to call us and be like, guys, we've been waiting for you all these years. We need your help. And we're like, thank you, because, you know, your movies have kind of been... Look at it, they make amazing movies, and they're like, if anything, I think we'll have gas them.
What if we get an Archer like Galaxy Edge? Like they make a whole theme park for us.
Oh my goodness.
Hit the internet, guys.
It's just the original ISIS office, and that's complete with all of Brett's death stains.
I thought you were going to say it's Moore Island. And I was like, oh, I don't know. Family show.
Doing the last couple of seasons, different themes you've done, have you found that, or what would you say is your favorite reference or something you thought that's stolen from?
We referenced the huge blockbuster Chris O'Donnell vehicle, Vertical Limit. That terrible show, it was on a terrible series or movie that was on a mountain. But in the Avalanche episodes, I forget what the name of the episode was, but it was like the 3rd episode of season 6. There's a huge avalanche, and there's like a sequence of 3 shots that is straight up vertical limit. Because we looked at what they were doing, like, yeah, it's just that. We'll make a vertical limit homage, and we'll just homage it. It'll be great.
To the counter of that, though, there was an episode in season 7 that Adam just straight up said, rip off as many scenes from Bullet as you can. Which I'm like, thank you, I've been waiting for this. Yeah.
We did, but we also, I'm proud of the way we did that homage to Bullet, because we didn't do it as a shot-for-shot remake. Yeah, we included shots from Bullet that if you know that sequence, you'll recognize that sequence, or those shots, especially like, you know, the cars going up and downhill, up and downhill. But we also treated it like, and paced it like an average car chase for Archer, that we used shots that were our shots. Like, a lot of people have referenced Bullet and done it shot for shot, pace for pace, scene for Bullet, and it kind of doesn't work.
Yeah, it only works in Bullet.
Because exactly, it works in Bullet because it's Bullet.
Yeah.
So what we want to do is like reference those things, but not feel beholden to those things. And because of that, I feel like that sequence that we put together is stronger for it.
Although at some point, we should probably get somebody to actually make a shot remake of Bully, just using what we did.
Yeah.
Because all of ours, like you said, it's out of order, which was the fun part, was being like, oh, this shot works here in this, because it's like, with all the stuff I did, I designed my sequence and then took the bullet shots. You know, because it's like, otherwise you get shoehorned into trying to make something fit that it shouldn't have done that in the first place.
There's a Roy Schneider old movie called The 7-Ups that has a fantastic car chase in it, where there's not really a score to it, it's just like the sound of the engines screaming damage for 10 minutes.
But also that
I
those
cite
sounds
that.
are the score and are the tension.
Yeah, I cite that sequence a lot, and we've used it as reference for our storyboards to like, kind of like how they did this, but let's do it differently. You sort of springboard off these live action, so that's sort of the idea that informs what you're doing, but you're not like doing exactly what they did. You're kind of seeing how things move, camera shake, or like mounting a camera to the hood of a car at that level, so your horizon kind of matches what they were doing, but our motion and where we're going, what we're doing within that camera shot is entirely different. That's the way we try to use all our references. Like, let that reference inform your work, but don't do what they did. Like that's different.
Yeah.
Unless it's vertical limit.
Unless
They
it's-
can't.
We tried to get Chris O'Donnell, but I wish. There was so the first season I was there full time was season 4, and there's the episode Legs, where Ray gets new legs, and there's Krieger's got the Sawbot. In the boards, as a joke, I just referenced the Back to the Future remote control, the controls to the DeLorean, and I even drew in the speedometer and everything. So the illustration, our illustration our designers got it, and that's what they designed it to look like. 2 things about that. One, I had put in the dialogue from Back to the Future underneath that panel, and so like, once this baby hits 88 miles an hour, we're gonna see some serious shit. To which I got a note from the associate art director at the time, Chad Hurd, who was like, was there a script update I didn't know about? And I was like, no, that was just me being funny. He's like, knock it off.
Yeah, don't do that. It's causing problems.
Yeah, it did. And then once I saw the final thing, I think they changed it a little bit more once they realized what I had done. Like, it just was missing the odometer at the top. It looked exactly like.
We're good.
Yeah.
We're a very lazy show.
I was amusing myself, not thinking that it would actually go that far. And, so, yeah, and sometimes that's just how stuff happens.
You're efficient even off all of this.
I'll take that. Yeah.
Do you have?
Oh.
Oh,
So Joker had one.
oh.
He had 3 more, so we'll get through.
Okay, Joker, and then you. Okay.
Joker?
Okay, I'm gonna cut out 2, so this is my last one. I thoroughly enjoyed the Archer episode where Archer was put in place of Bob's Burgers.
Oh, yeah.
And like the entire family in that style. Have you considered doing at least 1 episode of Bob's Burgers with those characters? Because I would love to watch that. With Archer as Bob and his family. Like, would you do an episode of Bob's Burgers?
Sure.
I'd love to see it.
I think they're pretty good at doing it. I don't think they need our help.
I would do it, but yeah. No, we are great fans of that show. Fans of Lauren Bouchard. That he and Adam Reed are friends, and Matt Thompson as well. So that's how that all came about. And also, they stole our actor. Jerks. Remember the Silly Spider Monkey fiasco? Hey, that comes back. Nora Smith, who is an executive producer on Bob's Burgers, also a cast member of Silly Spider Monkey fiasco.
What he's saying is pedigree.
And Stephen Hendricks is an insurance agent, also a member of Silly Spider Monkey.
Success.
So, in the episode,
Clearly not a fan.
but they're doing the car chase, and you guys do one of the scenes where they throw a car off the ramp, and parts of the references says they just reuse that scene. What's your favorite fourth wall in art? That's our man.
I don't know if I have a favorite one. I know every time Archer makes a crack about Lana's hands being gigantic, I think is actually a crack on like how we drew her hands in the pilot. I think that's where that joke came from, is Adam just didn't like